This precious stone set in the Silver Sea. The UK is a maritime nation. Our maritime industries drive our exports. Our ports handle 95% of the nation's trade in goods. The key link giving British exporters access to global markets. Our maritime services, from our world-famous flag to insurance to shipbroking, provided to customers throughout the world. Our marine manufacturing and technology industries, dynamic and innovative. World-class ports and infrastructure. World-class skills and services. World-class technology and innovation. The maritime nation, open for business.
So, it's my task here to welcome you all, first of all, to Clarksons. Delighted to see you all here. And we're very pleased to actually partner and support this new and inaugural event for the Maritime Masters Programme. This programme has been designed to bring academia and industry closer together and to celebrate, really, the UK's leading role, as you've just seen here, the leading role in the maritime industry. So what is the Maritime Masters and why is Clarksons here, inviting you all here to our offices? So firstly, I think, we'd like to applaud and really think this is a fantastic innovation because it's about the future of our industry and the future of our industry in the UK, this proud heritage that we hold. Most importantly for me today is actually the students and the presentations that you're going to give. So, no pressure. Each of these students have been selected by their universities and have been working on their research piece, their study, together with industry. They've come from universities of Plymouth, John Moore University, Liverpool, Southampton, Strathclyde, Cass Business School, Cardiff, Newcastle, and Queen Mary. Each of them will present their research, and then you, yes, you get to decide the winners. There are iPads around the room, and after the event, after their presentation, you will get to be able to go and vote on the winning presentation. So students have worked across a number of topics, incredibly relevant today, and actually also tomorrow for our maritime sector. Seafarer health and well-being, blockchain, maritime clusters, navigation, operational efficiency, IMO regulations. Now that's been a hot topic, and IMO efficacy. We're delighted and privileged to be hosting Her Royal Highness the Princess Royal here today. I don't think there has been a bigger supporter of UK maritime, so I can't think of a better person to come here and actually present this award. So I'm sure we're all eagerly awaiting her arrival later. Why Clarksons? Why are we getting involved? Well, Clarksons is the world's leading shipbroker. We're also the world's leading investment bank in the marine space. But we're also the world's leading research company for commercial data on shipping. We believe in research wholeheartedly. It underpins and is the central pillar of our business and our strategy for our group. Within our group, we have over 100 people in research, collecting and validating this data, and then 50 analysts who are doing the commercial, physical and financial research analysis on the maritime space. That's larger than most of our competitors are in their existence in their competitive broking space. So we really have a fundamental belief that validation and proof of validation is key to good decision making. There were 3 million downloads of our data by industry last year. We supported 50% of the capital market offerings with industry sectors. We do the valuation work for 24 of the top 25 lenders in the maritime space. So when we say research, we understand what it means, and we understand what authoritative research means. To demonstrate that in another way, we gave 3,000 boardroom presentations to industry last year, really shaping the thoughts and minds of the cargo owners and the asset owners within the marine space. So why us? Why would we choose to sponsor this and these innovations? Because for us, it's about research and data. It's about innovation. We've been doing a lot of investment in the last few years on innovation. Again, Clarkson's had a heritage relationship with innovation. But also it's about the youth, the future. All of those things Clarkson's have been investing in heavily over the last few years. So when we saw this opportunity, we really applauded it wholeheartedly and wanted to support it. So the Maritime UK has been something we've been supporting with a lot of other people within the maritime cluster in the UK, also trying to lobby the government on a number of aspects to get the agenda right for the maritime services in the UK. One of the other things that didn't quite come through in the video for me was law. Maritime law is predominantly UK law. We have an insane advantage in the UK that most of the world works the marine space in English and based on maritime law. It's another part of the crucial part of the cluster. The UK still holds its proud position as the leading position in maritime services, but it is under threat. For us to hold its position as the leading country, Brexit is maybe an opportunity when the government also can work with academia and industry to craft the right future for our maritime strategy going forward. It is the right time to address that issue. A big part of that is employing the right people, training the right people. I was asked maybe to say something about Brexit. Clarkson's now employs 1,600 people in 50 offices in 22 countries and 57 nationalities. Shipping is a truly global business. But we're a UK PLC, our head office is here in London, and we're very proud of our maritime heritage. So we want to help train all nationalities to the best of their capability, and we want to employ them in this very proud British firm. But that needs this kind of collaboration between academia and industry, and that's why, again, why Clarkson's is keen to support this endeavour. So, I was also then asked, do you want to make a few comments about the environmental factors, digitalisation, decarbonisation, cybersecurity, automation? These are the challenges that I've been told our industry faces. Well, I think we just turn that on its head. These aren't the challenges, these are the opportunities. That's what maritime service is about. Taking that challenge, using innovation, using bright, intelligent people, applied intelligence to solve these solutions. Find the solutions. That is what the UK has a massive heritage in doing. So those are opportunities for you guys. That's the opportunity that you face in the UK, in the maritime in the future. Those challenges will be met. The question is who meets them. So on that note, again, congratulations to the finalists. Good luck, most importantly. And then I'm handing over. Who am I handing over to?
Alistair.
There we go.
Thanks,
Alistair, over to you.
Right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I think half of my talk's already been given. Fantastic. So I want to talk about the Maritime Research and Innovation UK. This is a new initiative, and it's about collaboration within the UK between industry and academia. For too long, we've been sort of acting as competitors, but we really have decided to get together and act as a team. And you can see on the slide the logos of some of the actors within that. So we want to build on the excellent UK marine community. We've already had a bit of an overview of that, and enable the UK to exploit the global opportunities. And Maritime UK will act as a catalyst and an enabler for this to happen. You've already heard about the global opportunities, so you should at least be able to fill in the last bit there. Add your own opportunities. There are huge opportunities out there, and the global market is growing. There's significant growth. Just look at there for autonomous ship vessels. The market is expected to grow 15% year on year, maybe even more. It's a huge opportunity. So a little bit of an overview. What it is a collaborative of the technology and systems innovation. I'm afraid law is not in there. Apologies. Why? If we're going to compete as a country, we need to collaborate. Who? Industry, academia, government, all working in partnership. We'll happily work with the lawyers as well. And how? Well, we want to link research, that's you guys, with industry, that's you guys. And it's always been a problem that we tend to have academia, bright ideas, industry, doing things well, and there's what's known as the valley of death. It's moving what university through to actual use out there in industry. So by working as collaboration, we can try and move them much more effectively from one to the other. Where? Well, there's going to be a hub set up at Strathclyde University, and we're going to use the hub and spoke, so that'll be the HQ, but all the key universities will be involved in that. They're spread around the country, and also the industry. When? Well, we're working on it now, and we hope to be in place for financial year 19. So that's in what? About 6 months, 8 months? Quite soon. So making it happen. This is where we are so far. Updated for November. We've already got a strategic plan, been talking to industry, talking to government. We're engaged with our members, got our business cases ready, and we're still finalising the business plan. So to follow up, those are the two main contact details at university, Professor Alex Duffy, or industry, Patrick Carney from Babcock, and that's the lead partner on the industry side. Or you can come and talk to me later today. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Alistair, and thank you again too, Andy. It's great to be here, and it really, really is good to see the first Maritime Masters come to its conclusion. And I'm going to talk a little bit later about the future, but needless to say, my firm intention is that this is the first of many Maritime Masters occasions, and we are going to institutionalise this for good, because I believe it is very good indeed. It is absolutely crucial, as you've heard already, for maritime industries to work with universities to carry forward the exciting maritime agenda in this country. Maritime UK has been working very hard. Its reason for existing is to promote the maritime sector in this country. Britain traditionally has been the world's maritime leader, and it still firmly leads, particularly in some areas, most obviously maritime services. But it is, as Andy said, under a huge amount of competition. It is our job, quite simply, to make sure that this country is the leading maritime nation. To do that, we have to become leaders in brains and intelligence. You achieve nothing in this world today unless you have the finest intellect devoted to your industry. And therefore, Maritime Masters is one of many means of making sure that we cement the relationship between industry and this country's finest brains. That is what we are here to do. That is why this program is so important. And if we work together, and if we really work together, hard, collaboratively, we will make sure that this country has the leading maritime position which it should achieve and which it deserves. Just a few thank yous before we move into the presentations themselves. Thank you to Andy and Clarksons. Thank you too for Associated British Ports for your support of this programme. I particularly like to thank Matthew Wright from the Chamber of Shipping and Jenny Atkinson from the Chamber. Matthew for, I think, really having the first idea for the Maritime Masters programme, and Jenny for making sure that this event has happened today in particular. Many more thank yous, I'm sure, at the end, particularly, of course, to the students. So now, what is going to happen? Each of the 8 students is very shortly going to stand up and give their presentations. I know how it feels. You are amongst friends, and we are all willing you on to do your very best. And if you do a Theresa May, you have a few coughs and splutters or something falls on the wall, don't worry. You have our sympathies. So we all want you just to enjoy yourselves up here, if that is at all possible. Now, when each of you has finished presenting, I will possibly make a few remarks, because I'm going to be really trying to understand exactly what you're talking about, because some of this is really advanced stuff, which is fantastic, and then we will move on to the next finalist. Now, when you've all finished, you're going to move back to that side of the room, and we, as the audience, are all going to come and talk to you and learn even more about what you've spoken about, and ask you any, I hope, intelligent questions. Now, that's the really important bit, because, as Andy said, we need to be voting for you. So, everybody in the room, place your votes. No abstainers, no skiving off to admire the view outside or anything like that. You as the audience have got to work really hard, because these 8 people are going to, want you to do a really thorough job in making up your minds as to who is going to be the winner. Actually, they're all winners because they got in this room in the first place. But you've got to choose one person, and I want you to do it really thoughtfully and make sure that you're as well informed as possible before you press the button on the iPad. So when we've done that, we will all return to our seats. We will find out who is the winner. Kerry Thompson from ABP will stand up here and announce the winner. And then, by then, we will have welcomed Her Royal Highness the Princess Royal, and she will give the prize to the winner, and I'm sure we'll have a few very supportive things to say about this programme as well. So look, enough from me. You are really wanting to hear, to start with, from Sabrina Fan of Plymouth University, who is going to do the brave job of kicking off. So I'm going to hand over, Sabrina. You've got 5 minutes. Off you go.
Thank you, David. My name is Sabrina Fan. I'm a recent graduate from Plymouth University. So historically, the role of a watchkeeper is purely to keep a safe navigational watch. However, with an over-reliance on instrumentation and commercial pressures, it has become increasingly difficult to inculcate safety aboard ships. With reference to current industry practices, namely problems associated with not radar, but the lack of efficacy towards using it. Even with AIS, there's a lot of contention around when you're supposed to or not supposed to use it. So my research project specifically examined the type of stress induced in relation to navigating in restricted visibility. As a navigator enters a fog bank, he or she has no control over it and doesn't know when it's going to dissipate. So in a situation like this, he or she could be fearful of making the mistakes that could cause them to lose their job and consequently experiences what we call situational stress. So to quantify the effects of restricted viz, I looked into how seafarers respond visually when these externalities hit through the concept of observational ability, which is the ability to shift your visual focus from object to object and to also locate certain objects in the sea area. Now, in light of this, I constructed a route using the Transat simulator and created 2 5-minute scenarios of the same passenger ferry going through fog and designed 10 targets to include target vessels such as bulk carriers, warships, cardinal marks spaced in a way which would further invoke stress, for example, where risks of collision exist. I had 21 participants, all of whom were students from my own course, navigation students. And before they began the experiment, I asked them about their qualifications as well as experience at sea. All of my students, so they were not required to maneuver the ferry. All they had to do was tell me when they spot a target, and I would time their reaction time taken to respond to each of these targets. And as always, there's no provision of any equipment, so no radar, no ACDIS, nothing like that. Where possible, they would discern features of these target ships and tell me the relationship of these target ships to themselves as well as to other targets at sea. And at the end of the experiment, all of my students were administered an assessment-based questionnaire for me to gain an understanding of their stress levels using the State Trait Anxiety Inventory, STAI, for them to rate their stress levels. So I've divided my participants into 2 groups based on their experience at sea, one being 0 to 7 months of sea time, the other being 8 to 13 months of sea time. And the mean reaction time following exposure to situational stress for both of these groups were not dissimilar. In fact, the more experienced group, 8 to 13 months, had a longer mean reaction time, contrary to what I predicted. And since the p-values for both of these scenarios were both larger than 0.05, we can accept the null hypothesis that there's no difference in mean reaction time with experience. Only 10% of the students reported to be stressful, and 76.2% voted 1 out of 1 to 4 being very much so to feeling worried. And these are just some of the things that I believe contributed to my results. So in answer to the question whether current professional development is sufficient in the navigation realm, I think we need to understand the prevailing idea in most simulator training is that the closer a simulation is to a real-world task, the more successful that skill transfer is going to be, and that being observational ability. But because there's that detachment from reality as students, we are in training, there's no impact if we crash, and so it's much more difficult to instill stress, whereas if someone's job's on the line, they know they have to perform, and therefore we need to really make them understand the stress they'd be in for this to work. So to conclude, as the Nautical Institute recommends, what really differentiates an experienced navigator from a normal navigator is an experienced one would look ahead, look astern and to the sides of the vessel, move around the bridge, and have thoughtful appraisal of the situation, instead of just being a radar operator staring at data or remaining in one place during their entire period of duty. I hope you enjoy my presentation, and if you have any questions, please feel free to let me know. Thank you.
5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. My name is Momchil Terziev. I'm here representing the University of Strathclyde. And today I will be showing you my project called Numerical Investigation of the Behavior and Performance of Ships Advancing Through Restricted Shallow Waters. The general overview of the project is more or less as follows. The overall aim was to establish the effect channel dredging has on ship hydrodynamics. To accomplish this, I used computational fluid dynamics, which is the state-of-the-art methodology in hydrodynamic research. This is the numerical technique referred to on the slide. I also use empirical and analytical methods. However, today I'll only be showing you the computational fluid dynamics results. So the CFD basically uses the solution of the Navier-Stokes equation and can measure things like sinkage and trim, the combined effect of which is called ship squat, as well as ship resistance. I performed my analysis on the Duisburg test case container ship for a variety of speeds and bathymetries, which I will show you later on in the presentation. So what is ship squat? Well, the reduced underkeel clearance between the ship and the seabed causes the flow to accelerate. Now, this acceleration in flow causes a reduction in pressure, which translates into pronounced sinkage, which can lead to grounding and has been known to happen quite often. Now, groundings are consistently one of the top 5 causes of accidents according to the European Maritime Safety Agency, but also the vast majority of other categories happen in shallow waters as well, so we know that ship squat is almost certainly a contributing factor there as well. We also know that the maneuverability of the ship is compromised, as well as its resistance is increased massively in a variety of different shallow water bathymetries. So the case studies that I adopted are shown here. The first one is model as a shallow sea. Then channels 2 and 3 are 2 different types of dredge channels. And finally, channel 4 is a narrow canal. Now, here you can see the wave patterns generated by each channel, starting from channel 1, which is, again, the unrestricted water. And you can see how different they are in each case. This gives us a first indication that the results we also expect to be substantially different between the case studies. Now, this is shown for a full-scale speed of about 13 knots. Finally, moving on to the results. Starting from your left, you can see the graph for trim. As you can see, each case study provides substantially different results depending on how restricted each channel is. Moving on to sinkage, you see that each case has a very well-defined point at which the ship stops sinking. Now, this point also coincides with where the ship begins trimming massively. And finally, for resistance, as you can see, each case study has very different behavior in terms of resistance, but also the resistance hump is located at a different point, which suggests that horizontal restrictions are just as important as depth restrictions to the resistance of a ship. The outcomes, well, this was the first study to look at channel dredging using CFD, and I managed to publish this in the Journal of Fluids and Structures. So if you're interested to have all the information, I would suggest you ask me first questions after the presentation and then maybe head over there. The results confirm that sinkage is a dominant factor in the low speed range, whereas trim is the leading factor in the high speed range. However, experiments are always beneficial to establish this with 100% certainty. The future work, now I have already begun working on the first question as part of my PhD, which I started about 2 months ago. What happens when the flow in the shallow water region of a dredge channel equals the wave speed? Now, in aerodynamics, this would be a sonic boom where an airplane breaks the sound barrier. However, in shallow waters, we can do this for very low speeds because the wave speed depends on the water depth. And next is a steady-state solution achievable even for the lowest speeds examined. This relates to the fact that ships can sometimes emit waves forward of them, even when they're traveling completely flat, calm water. And this is a phenomenon that has not been examined with the tools available to us today. I hope you find the topic as enjoyable as I did. Thank you very much for listening.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tessa Jones, and I'm from Queen Mary University. So my master's was a master's of law, and I wanted to look at the question, bills of lading. If blockchain is the answer, what is the question? And I wanted to examine the legal and regulatory challenges, but also the opportunities that are presented by moving the bill of lading onto the blockchain. So my dissertation was really born out of this recent phenomenon that we've seen, where you've got certain of the world's major shipping companies are looking to develop global trade blockchain platforms. And this would obviously involve moving the bill of lading onto the blockchain. Now, there is a potentially major hurdle to this trend that we've seen, and that's really the lack of supporting legislative infrastructure to support a blockchain bill of lading. So I wanted to kind of get to the heart of this question in my dissertation. And I identified 3 aspects that I thought were important to examine. The first was to look at the issue of why, when we already have some existing electronic bills of lading platforms, why haven't these already been widely adopted? And so when I talk about the existing platforms, that's Bolero, SDocs and eTitle, which are the 3 that have received approval from the International Group of P&I Clubs, and they therefore should be in wide existence, but aren't really. And I wanted to look at, can blockchain technology address these perceived shortcomings of the existing electronic bills of lading platforms? And then how would the legislative framework need to change to support this trend? And I ultimately sort of found that the United Nations Model Law on Electronic Transferable Records might be a solution. So for the first 2 issues, so why aren't the existing electronic bills of lading platforms being more widely adopted, and can blockchain technology provide a solution? I conducted a lot of interviews within the industry, so I spoke to the legal teams of Maersk and a major bulk carrier. And I also sat down with 2 international group P&I clubs just to ask them why did they think these electronic bills of lading platforms weren't really being adopted. So this slide contains a table that summarises what I found. And there were essentially 3 key issues, or 3 problems that were identified with the existing electronic bills of lading platforms. The first was that the industry doesn't really like centralised registry systems. So the existing electronic bills of lading platforms, they are all supplied by a third party, which is external to the shipping transaction. So effectively, all the data is held on an external system, and it's all based on that external system's proprietary technology. And that was seen to be unpopular. So looking at the blockchain comparison, blockchain technology is essentially built on a distributed ledger structure. So that kind of means that any participant in the platform should be able to see all information that's relevant to it naturally by virtue of the way the technology works. So it's not necessary to have this sort of third-party gatekeeper, as it were. The second issue that was identified was there is still some concerns around cyber and security risks associated with the existing electronic bills of lading platforms. So although there hasn't ever been any kind of incident, there's never been a hacking or anything like that, there is still a concern that they are vulnerable to attack because they're a centralised system, so there is one point of authority and therefore one point of weakness. And if you contrast this to the way that blockchain technology works, it has, by virtue of the way that it works, it is a distributed network, effectively. So it has a better built-in security system. And this effectively means that if somebody tried to hack into a blockchain, they would need to hack at least 50% of all of the participants in the platform to have a successful hack. So the chances of that happening are not that high. So there's less of a security concern for blockchain technology. And the final problem that was identified was the industry sees the existing electronic bills of lading platforms as sort of island, one-dimensional solutions, because all they really do is they try to automate the bill of lading, and ship owners are already quite good at doing that, so they're not that interested in an isolated solution. And blockchain technology, by contrast, it can be integrated with other types of technology, so it can give you more information through use of an Internet of Things device, for example, or geotagging on vessels where it can tell you where the vessel is or what the cargo is doing. So that could be used for cargo claims, that kind of thing. So they're more likely to provide you with what you need. So then we come to the key issue, which is what do we do about the legislative infrastructure? The key point about that is that electronic bills of lading are not formally recognised in most jurisdictions. They still require paper. So we have this problem that even if you have a platform, how do you actually enforce what's on there? So the existing electronic bills of lading systems, they operate a multi-partite agreement to get around this problem. But while that works within the platform, it's not clear-cut that it would work outside the platform for third parties. So really, it's sort of time that there was a legislative solution. And there is one in the form of the model law on electronic transferable records, because it does allow electronic documents to be recognised as having the functional equivalent of their paper documents. So it is a possible solution, but at the moment it's just a model law, so it's not actually being used, and there needs to be more engagement with it so that it can have some sort of valuable meaning for these types of systems. And so my key recommendations for the industry really are that there needs to be more of a dialogue about this, because it really is time that there's a formal legislative solution to these types of technologies so that they can start progressing and developing, and so that we can bring some more technology to the shipping industry in this way. So that would be my encouragement to the industry, would be to engage in more dialogue at this stage. Thank you very much.
Elvis May from Southampton University. Off we go, Elvis. 5 minutes, please.
I'm already here. Yeah. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Elvis. I'm studying at the University of Southampton. Oh, my name's again. My topic is the elevation of ship operational efficiency using AIS. So what do you think the ship operational efficiency means? So it is simply amount of fuel consumptions. So how much do you expect the fuel price takes in total ship life cycle cost? According to the recent study, the operating expenditure takes 77% for 20 years. And of that, the fuel takes 41%. It's quite a lot. It's money. So additionally, the global shipping companies are under pressure from the greenhouse gas emissions, the issues as well. So that is why it is very important for the ship owners and the ship operators to identify how much fuel is being used at their voyages. However, the fuel informations are rarely revealed to the public because the company think these are as confidential. So access to the fuel data is quite hard. Yeah, it's very limited so far. So my studies aim to generate the simplified tools to estimate the fuel using AIS and along with other public data. So AIS is automatic tracking systems, and it provides the ship identities and ship speed, locations, and etc. So based on the locations, we also get the wave and wind data from the internet. Thank you for NOAA. And so also ship technical data is easily achieved from the internet. Thanks, Clarkson, for your valuable data as well. Yeah. So using those of the public data, so I developed the simplified tools using naval architectural method. So for ship operational efficiency, I used the EOI definitions, which is the introduced by the IMO. The EOI is simply the amount of CO2 divided by the transportation work. So more simply, it is sum of the propulsion power and auxiliary power by the transportation work. So based on these definitions, I applied my methodology for each components. First of all, propulsion powers, I consider 4 different components: combat resistance, weather resistance, fouling resistance, and propeller efficiency. So then is the theoretical naval architectural method has been applied for each components, like Holtram Manon's and Townsend-Kwan's and Artisan method and Wagner and Bean series propeller has been used. And secondly, so auxiliary engine power is calculated from the product of the total engine power and the 4 different load factors. It's depending on the operating mode, is such as the cruisings, maneuverings, anchoring, and port. So these operating modes is simply identified from the AI speed, like this example. And finally, transportation work is easily estimated from the multiplication is cargo capacity and voyage distance, so based on the AIS data. So now is my methodology ready. So what next? Yeah, it should be validated, my methodology right or not. So luckily, my university have a good database to evaluate this one. So using the target vessels data, the calculated proportion power shows good agreement to the actual one. And then EOI shows 12% difference between the actual one and calculations. And finally, this example shows how my methodology works. So as ship speed changed, the EOI shows like this, and my calculated EOI like this, with good agreement. Yes, I recommend these things. And finally, this study is expected the benefits to the industry. I think my methodology might be used to evaluate the ship values for the ship owners and ship brokers and operators, especially second-hand markets. Thank you. I'm Elvis from University of Southampton.
Good afternoon. My name is Francesco Mistumenac, and I'm here to present, from Newcastle University, and I'm here to present my master's dissertation, which titles, Do IMO regulations lead to early scrapping? Well, as you might know, some IMO requirements are capital intensive, and ship owners could not afford the high cost and might sell the vessel in the demolition market. Indeed, at the beginning of this year, I read in TradeWinds, you might know this this webpage, that the two upcoming IMO regulations might lead part of the fleet to the demolition market. For this reason, the idea to study whether regulatory changes in the marine transport business came to my mind. When a ship is dismantled, it is important to mention that early scrapping for this research means that when a ship is dismantling before the 4th special survey, which is around the 20th anniversary date of a vessel, the ship is considered early scrap. Well, I studied 3 different IMO regulations. The first one is the well-known Regulation 13G of Annex 1 of MARPOL 7378 and its updated version, which scheduled the phasing out of single-hull tankers. This program started in 1995, and the latest allowed phasing out date was in 2010. The second regulation and the third regulation are upcoming, which means that will come into the next future. The first one is the 2020 sulfur cap, and the second one is the ballast water management convention. To study the first regulation, the regulation 13G, I took into consideration the VLCC fleet. I illustrated the product life cycle of the VLCC fleet and its different forms. As you can see here, the 1973 oil crisis clearly drove the turbine engine VLCC product to its maturity and then decline stage of its curve. And also you can see that the 2008 financial crisis accelerated the final phase of the decline stage of the single hull oil engine VLCC. What these product life cycle curves are saying to us is that in the VLCC market, there clearly were 3 different early scrapping tendencies. You can see here the line of the 4th special survey. Then the first early scrapping tendency was mainly generated by the 1973 oil crisis. The second one was mainly generated by low levels of earnings in the VLCC market. And the last one was generated by the 2008 financial crisis. Then, from 1995 to 2010, which was the period in which the IMO scheduled the phasing out of single-hull tankers, the early scrapping was residual. Therefore, we can say that this regulation did not lead early scrapping to the single-hull tankers. For predicting the effect of the 2 upcoming environmental IMO regulations in the existing fleet, I sent some questionnaires to some ship owners in order to answer just 2 questions, each one for each regulation, the Ballast Water Management Convention and the sulfur cap. As you can see in these 2 bar charts, I can state that it won't be any general scrapping strategy for complying with both regulations, and even less any early scrapping tendency. Then, to summarize, I would like to highlight 4 points from my research. First, that the main cause of early scrapping in the VLCC market was an economic factor, such as the oil crisis, the 2008 financial crisis, which both caused low levels of earnings in the market. Second, that the flexibility and the big advance notice of IMO regulations allow ship owners to adapt their fleet and to avoid early scrapping. Third, that it is not expected any early scrapping tendency in the market due to the 2 upcoming environmental IMO regulations. And finally, and I think that's the important thing, is that regulatory changes in the marine transport industry do not lead to early scrapping. Let me finish this presentation with some recommendations. First, I would recommend more collaboration from ship owners and their agents for participating in further researches in order to obtain more precise results on this topic, because some new IMO regulations might come into force in the next future. Thank you so much.
Hello, my name's Hazel, and I recently studied at John Moores University. Coming from a maritime background, as a seafarer, I have a practical mind, and I wanted to put my academic knowledge to the test when undertaking my dissertation. The UK Atlantic Gateway is a freight gateway concept for the region between Liverpool and Manchester. Hinterlands are connected by inland waterways known as the Manchester Ship Canal. The region is made up of a cluster of private maritime and logistics entities. This is the data published by the UK Department of Transport in its port connectivity study. When looking at an economic issue, I started with key publicised data. Freight corridors are made up of multimodal transport networks. Intermodalism is unitised cargo or containerised cargo with the ability to be transported by multiple modes, such as sea, inland waterway, rail, roads, and this framed the focus of this research. This figure has been constructed to show different publications and mechanisms currently influencing regional development from a maritime logistics perspective. It shows a semi-coordinated strategic policy alignment. It illustrates governance and non-governance structure for the Atlantic Gateway. Whilst undertaking the research, interestingly, it took a development which I wasn't expecting, and I'm happy to say that the interesting conceptual development has been identified from a literature review, industry and government publication analysis, interviews with key industry stakeholders, and an online survey. Contemporary academic thinking from leading researchers, Lee and Cullerlane, in 2016 suggested port shape was dependent on shipping networks, hinterlands, and port development strategy. While it's been found in this research that port shape also depends on governance, public sector strategy, technology, and innovation. Port shaping factors are very important to decision makers when developing port infrastructure, political, and industry policy. During the research, I identified a hierarchy of influence that was established because the governance structure and boundaries remain somewhat unclear from the case of the Atlantic Gateway. The research gave an interesting different perspective than the more harmonious opinion expressed from the UK Department of Transport Port Connectivity Study published earlier this year. From the data that was analysed, probably most significantly of all, its governance is considered extremely important and significant Governance is considered extremely important and significant improvement is required in the case of the UK's Atlantic Gateway. In terms of practical application, there was mixed views about how well governance is applied in practice, though it was found that local policy should ordinarily align with national strategy. It was felt that national policy was often impractical to apply. So in conclusion, intermodal connectivity is a key success factor for maritime clusters. Maritime cluster organisations play a significant role in representing the interests of the respective region. Facilitation of frictionless trade and freight corridors are of considerable importance to regional development for maritime nations. The way we consider port shape is evolving. Port focal logistics lies at the heart of multimodal unitised cargo transportation. Effective governance is complex in countries with fully privatised ports. The associated roles and responsibilities may appear to be clear, but in actual practice, this has been found not to be the case. In such cases as the Atlantic Gateway, within the maritime sector as a whole, strong, effective relationships are required to ensure each stakeholder is informed and enabled to fulfill their duty of optimising their services and contribute to regional sustainability and further development. Connectivity, whether considered physically, digitally, or in terms of emerging trends, should be a high priority. Having already paved the way for privatisation of ports, and in sight of the shifting political climate, the UK has a great opportunity to further research and implement good governance for maritime clusters and freight gateways. Finally, I would like to thank my family, my supervisor, LJMU programme leader for their support during undertaking this research, and I'd also like to thank Maritime UK and UK Chamber of Shipping for this opportunity to speak to you.
Thank you very much. My name is Rico Seigmann. I'm presenting Cardiff University today. Well, my research project is entitled Member States of the International Maritime Organization, an assessment of performance and governance capability. And it aims to answer three questions, one of which is, what are the difficulties in complying with maritime conventions member states face? How is governance capability distributed among them? And how are deficiencies addressed by the IMO, and are they sufficiently addressed at all? So I've done this, structured this around three major parts. The first one is a comprehensive review of IMO's member state audit scheme, which has not been considered in academia a lot. The second one is a quantitative part covering all member states and comprising 16 variables from the governance side, from the socio-economic part, and obviously maritime variables. And the third one is an in-depth study of IMO's ITCP. For everybody who knows this, it's the Integrated Technical Cooperation Program, which I was fortunate to do at the Maritime Knowledge Center here in London at the IMO. And if we look at the audit scheme, IMO's regime, to audit member states in terms of their performance, we should be aware of the fact that it mostly consists of developing nations and least developed countries, which roughly reflects the member state structure of the IMO as well. And this research led basically to the conclusion that IMO states mainly have a significant institutional problem rather than they lack in resources or technical expertise in their national maritime administrations. So mainly it's the administrations, the domestic administrations, which are still running ineffectively, inefficiently. They often show a very high degree of proliferation, and there's often much too little coordination between different national agencies entrusted with different duties relating to the maritime dimension. If we then look at their capability to govern maritime resources, in my data set, states have accumulated within 7 major clusters, both describing their maritime weight and governance capability, and leading to the conclusion that least governance capability is still found in countries which also exhibit least maritime weight, which is basically good news, but also those states showing the highest degree of governance, mainly industrialized countries, nowadays have only moderate maritime impact. It's a very individual thing, but this data set, in particular, every individual case gives a very interesting insight into it, I believe.
If we then look at IMO's ITCP, the Technical Cooperation Program, which is the only measure implemented by the IMO to assist developing nations to ensure equal and effective implementation, we see contrasting trends between the policy output of the IMO, which is increasing over time, and there's very ambitious agendas to come, as we all know, if we think of 2020 sulfur cap or greenhouse gas reductions, and the expenditure made available to assist developing nations, which has flattened out since the mid-1990s and never recovered. So what do we take away from these three major parts? Firstly, it's the national public institutions which jeopardize equal and effective implementation of maritime regulation. It's not primarily the lack of expertise, nor is it necessarily lack of financial support. Second, maritime weight and governance capability remains individual, but industrialized countries, OECD countries, the UK, the European Union, they exhibit only moderate maritime weight these days, and developing countries are clearly on the rise and make up a very significant share. And thirdly, IMO's ITCP is stagnating since the mid-1990s, despite an increasing policy output, and we all know about the ambitious agendas which are faced by IMO. So why should the industry bother to give this, the important sense? IMO has adopted recently, just last June, a new resource mobilization strategy, which sees the organization as a broker, as an intermediary between donor agencies, such as development banks and recipient countries. There's massive development aid available, but still untapped in the maritime domain, and there's only little to non-private investment these days. Again, this requires strong and credible institutions. Let me close with one last slide. What do I see next for industry? For us, as the maritime community, it's the UK maritime industry to get involved, and it needs to proactively urge the IMO to attract donor attention finally after 20 years and harness these tremendous business opportunities along the development process of rising maritime nations. This will both create economic value for the business, but also public value, which we should be considerate of. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Taejun Bang from South Korea. I was a marine engineer and studied shipping, trade, and finance at Cost Business School. I'm here to talk about my research project, investigation of technical efficiency into Capesize bulk carrier and its commercial interpretation in time charter market. I'm sorry. Yeah, this is an overview of what I present today. First of all, we will look at diagram of value creation market in the shipping industry, focusing on the time charter market. And then I will explain technical efficiency model and its binding at 80% MCR, main engine route. Based on these bindings, we will look at the earning power of the efficient vessel in the time charter market from 2015 to 2018. In conclusion part, I will summarize my binding and deliver its implication in the maritime industry. This is a diagram of value creation market. Please look at the time charter market side. In time charter market, fuel bills are paid by charter, so energy efficiency, in other words, less fuel consumption, is bargaining factor in charter negotiation. So a vessel with higher efficiency is expected to get better employability and higher time charter rate. And this research aimed to capture this relation between technical efficiency and earning power in the time charter market. This is a model for technical efficiency calculation at individual vessel level. So the model measure amount of cargo emission generated by a ship. So numerator is the amount of cargo emission generated by the ship, and the denominator is amount of transport work done by a ship. Before going on to the next slide, I want to note that in this research, lower value in technical efficiency means that a vessel generates less emission, so it is environmentally friendly. This is the result of technical efficiency at 80% MCR. Here, MCR means maximum continuous rating, which is the same meaning as main engine maximum output. If you look at the deadweight category, the mini Capesize range is significantly not efficient than the total average. Moving on to the main engine type category, here MC means camshaft control engine, and ME engine means electrically controlled engine. As you can see, ME engine outperforms slightly than MC engine. If you look at the age category down here, we can see the trend that the younger ships tend to more efficient than older ships, apart from the 10 to 15 years category. This deviation from the trend is because there was a massive supply in less efficient tonnage into the Capesize market in 2010 and 2011. In fact, the number of observations in 2010 and 2011 category is 398, and its technical efficiency value is 3.29, which is higher than total average of 3.22. Here is the overview of commercial interpretation. To measure the earning power, the Welch test, the hypothesis test, Welch test, is performed at 95% confidence level. As you can see, historical data says efficient vessel earns 5% less than not efficient vessel. Let's do some further analysis on the next slide. Here, the time scale is divided into two. First, 2015 to 2016, and 2017 to 2018. As you can see, 3 out of 6 outcomes shows that efficient vessel earns less efficient vessel. And here we now come to a conclusion. First, the deviation from the trend in technical efficiency. As I mentioned, there was a massive supply in less efficient tonnage in the past boom year in 2010 and 2011. This shows that shipping's behavior investment in cheaper and then shorter payback ships. And the second, to efficient ship deliver a better earning power. As you saw in the commercial interpretation part, there is a lack of credibility in investing in efficient ship because there is a less financial reward. Third, it is market value in time charter market. My finding is potentially low expected reward in efficient ship, and then this can be evidence of it's a market failure in the time charter market. And then what can be the reason for this market failure? First of all, there is a lack of standard and information in measuring the technical efficiency in operation level. And another can be there is a agent principle problem, also known as the split incentive problem. And lastly, what could be a regulatory solution to address this issue? Elvis mentioned that ship performance data is confidential, is not open to public. And my suggestion is that if this performance data is open to public, we can measure technical efficiency more transparent way. So the pricing model in time charter market can be more transparent and reasonable, leading to investing in more efficient vessel and reduction in carbon emission. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Kerry Thompson, the Group Head of Academy for Associated British Ports. I'm going to keep my speech fairly brief because I'm sure the students are wanting to understand who the winner is. So firstly, congratulations to all the students. You did a fantastic job this afternoon, not just only in your presentations, but I saw lots of questions being asked to you all, so well done on that. From an Associated British Ports perspective, we're delighted to be one of the sponsors for the event today. The Associated British Ports are keen to have links with academia at all different levels. One of the things we recognise is skills is very important, and I'm pleased to say that we have 2 of our marine operations apprentices with me this afternoon, who are actually on an apprenticeship programme working alongside South Tyneside College at a level 5 perspective. So we look at skills in a way that says, what do we need for the future? And the guys that have been sat in front of us this afternoon, the students here, some of the projects that you've presented is key for us as well. So someone talked earlier about the brightest brains is what we're looking for. So, you know, the brightest brains is key, but actually some of the projects that you've presented in a way that we need to take hold of that and look at how we move that into our business moving forward is also key for us. So I think I'm not going to keep you waiting any longer because I'm sure, as I say, there's a group of students who are wanting to know, but I also know there's quite a few sponsors of those students sat in the room who are keen to know as well. So I'd like to take the opportunity to formally welcome Her Royal Highness Princess Anne with us this afternoon. If I can ask you to join me as I announce the winner. So without further ado, I'm delighted to announce that the winner is Tessa Jones.
Well, first of all, congratulations, and certainly to our winner, but also to all of those of you who've presented today. I think you've already been through quite a competitive issue just to get here. But hopefully you will find this a useful experience. What is more important, I think, from the perspective here of Maritime UK and your sponsors and Clarksons, it's making sure we engage with a broad spectrum of young people who understand the importance of the maritime sector, and also the breadth of that maritime sector, because I think we frequently have a problem in terms of particularly the academic environment of recognising just what the scope is across the maritime piece. So to those universities who've also been very much part of this, a big thank you for assisting with this particular challenge, and I hope we can go on to increase that in the years to come. But I know you've worked hard already this afternoon and put your various issues across. And I suspect that there are people here who may not have wholly agreed with the winner, so they'll all be interested in all of you in terms of what you have to offer. Maritime sector is a big business. It still adds about £37.4 billion to GDP, and it employs nearly 1 million people. That's a big sector. But my goodness, you'd struggle to try and just say, oh, well, there are only certain types of jobs in that. I mean, they do literally cover the range of abilities and skills. And it's important that we remember that. But at this level, it's equally important that we're really looking to the future and to how people see that might being developed in a range of different areas, which is what you've done today. There will be challenges, and some of you have touched on that, around more environmentally designed ships and their running. The digitisation and automation, where was it going to work the best? The art of the possible, is it always necessary? Where really is it going to make a difference? And I think all of those things need to be approached from a variety of different directions. The interesting thing about you as a group, of course, you're also very international. And you have come to Britain to study. That says something about, I think, the fact that we have a history in maritime, not very surprisingly being an island, you would argue, but we still have, I think, an enormous investment in the maritime sector and a good understanding, perhaps not as high profile within the UK as it sometimes is elsewhere. So for those of you who have travelled quite a long way to study here, thank you for doing that, because it does actually help raise the profile of that, particularly the academic sector in the UK. And it adds to the challenges that you can challenge other students with in terms of the range of subjects and matters to be studied, and actually the excitement of what you can do in the future, of which there is, as you noticed, quite a lot. I'm so glad there were only 7 of you, because that would have been a real challenge to the brain, because all of those are different. All of those have potential for the future. And I think all of them will create interests in their own right. And I hope many of you will continue to pursue that. And I hope that, well, we'll hear shortly, but this will encourage more involvement from more universities in the future to understand just what the range of capacity within the maritime sector is for students at all levels. But my thanks for being part of this, and my congratulations to all of you for what you have achieved. And I hope you will continue to do so. This is a big area. I'm sure there will be plenty of people here who will be keeping an eye on it as well. Thank you.
Your Royal Highness, ladies and gentlemen, again, my congratulations to the finalists and particularly to our winner, Tessa Jones. Well done. Now, before the event itself, earlier this afternoon, Maritime UK and all the universities met together to talk about how we carry forward the Maritime Masters Programme. And as I said in my earlier remarks, I am absolutely determined that this will become a permanent institution and a real beacon of the collaboration between universities and industry. That is so important. Certainly some of the ideas that we had really were talking about how we increase the involvement in the programme. We want as many master's students as possible across the country who are studying maritime to feel that they are having some sort of involvement in this programme. So I want to see us working towards that, and also to make sure that the areas that are being studied are both good for the students themselves, because clearly their first priority has to be getting a great degree, but also that those studies are of value to the maritime industry as a whole, and particularly are of value to companies who are going to support and sponsor the work that the students are doing, and also for us to make sure that all of you who are studying the maritime industry continue to do so in your working lives and bring all that fantastic learning that you've gained and that you are continuing to contribute that. And I hope as much as possible, of course, in the UK. We'd be very, very grateful for that, please. So this programme has a great future. But I also just wanted to spend a couple of moments talking about the future of Maritime UK, because we've done a lot over the last 3 years. There is an awful lot still to do. I took over as chair 3 years ago. It was a great honour to follow Geoffrey Evans, Lord Mount Evans, the previous chair, who did such a great job in authoring the Maritime Growth Study, which really has brought about the transformation of Maritime UK, a transformation of the relationship between industry and government, and has really, I think as well, transformed government's view towards maritime, government's involvement in it, and government's wish to drive this industry forward in collaboration with ourselves. That's been a fantastic platform. And I think that most importantly in the last 3 years, what we have done is we have once again brought maritime firmly onto the map and into the minds of people in this country. An industry which you rightly said, Your Royal Highness, has one which has sort of lost some of its awareness. That is now really coming back, and I'm delighted that we have achieved that. But we've done so much work otherwise. We've supported and seen through some really important legislation. we've created an international trade program working with the Department of International Trade. We've been to Shanghai, we've been to New York, we're shortly going down to Chile. So we are really ramping up our export potential. We're at the same time working with Treasury on how we can make Britain an even more favourable place in which to do maritime business. And we're working with BEIS on our industrial strategy, really to revitalise our marine industries in this country. A lot of work is going on there, and we can do so much more. And particularly when we hear these presentations, the technical presentations in particular, that contribution is going to be so important in making sure that our marine industries are right in the forefront of global technology. So we have done a huge amount, but we have so much further to go. We're delighted that the government is launching its Maritime 2050 strategy. We're working very, very closely together on that. That is going to map out where this country is taking its maritime sector for the next 30 years. Such important work. So an awful lot to do, great achievements. If I can just wave this at you if you haven't seen it already. Before you go, if you haven't managed to pick up a copy of the Maritime UK Annual Review, do so. It's a breathless and very full piece of reading. I looked through it. I can hardly think of anything in here that I personally was involved in, but with the fantastic support of the Maritime UK Board, all the members of all the Maritime UK committees, of which there are endless numbers, and then most importantly, Ben Murray, Director of Maritime UK, who seems to have done virtually all the work himself. Quite an amazing chap, really is. It's been a wonderful period, and we've made a lot of progress. Now, it is. I've been in the chair for 3 years. Absolutely far too long. I've probably given by now all the ideas and thoughts that I can give to move this forward. So at the end of the month, I'm handing over the chairmanship to Harry Thiachari, the leading marine partner at Norton Rose, and a very long-established and well-respected member of the maritime industry. And also, we have a new vice chairman as well, Sarah Kenny, CEO of BMT, and I'm hugely delighted to have Sarah in that position and hope that she will eventually move on to chair Maritime UK at some stage in the future. I'm going to invite her up in a moment. As you will see, I think she represents the new generation of maritime, so it's highly appropriate that she plays a key role in our organisation. So I'd like to just invite Sarah to perhaps come up and say a few words. Thank you, Sarah.
What an introduction. And you can probably tell from that introduction that I have some very big and quite nice shoes to fill, I think. So I'd like to start, first of all, by welcoming and thanking Her Royal Highness, the Princess Royal, for your patronage and support of today's event. It is very much appreciated, and I know it means a great deal to the young people who have come here today. It means a great deal to all of us, so thank you. I would also like to thank David Dingle, who, with his usual level of humility, sort of denies any involvement in getting us to where we are today. But David has played a pivotal, fundamental role in getting us where we are today. He does leave Harry Thiachari and I with some very big shoes to fill. But we look forward, David, not only to delivering on your legacy, but you know, to upping the game and carrying it on. So thank you very much. From myself, and I'm absolutely sure from everyone in this room, for everything you have done to get us here. I'd also like to extend thanks to Clarksons for your excellent hosting here today, and also to Associated British Ports, without whom you guys, again, would not be here today. So thank you so much for all of your support, and thank you also to Ben. I know you have worked incredibly hard to get us here, and the Chamber of Shipping, who I've had a couple of mentions today, but I recognise have been instrumental in pulling this programme together. So why is this stuff important? I was chatting to some of the students earlier. They were saying, we're so nervous. What happens if the room know more about what we're going to present than we do? I said, why are you worried about that? You know, it's the other way around. We're nervous about whether we're going to understand what you've presented. Why? I think I just about managed to get through all of them. I have to say there were some very important messages in there, real insights. I particularly liked your willingness to sock it to us like it is, and I really got the messages about collaboration. And not just inside industry, but better collaboration across wide communities of stakeholders. We have, as many of you presented, a lot of challenges as a maritime sector here in the UK and in our activities worldwide. But with challenge comes phenomenal opportunity. As a maritime sector, we are really on the cusp of making good on those opportunities. The opportunity is there. It is there for us to grasp. And a note to you guys, please stay with this. You were inspirational today. I'd love to see you standing here in a few years' time, inspiring another generation to make us a famous maritime nation for the future. So just keep hold of that. Go and tell your friends, your relatives, and anyone else who will listen what an exciting career opportunity and exciting future maritime has in the UK. We've also got, listening to your feedback, some great inter-sector, intergovernmental support right now, and we've got to capitalise on it. We've got to make the most of it. David mentioned the Maritime 2050 sector deal. We've also got a national shipbuilding strategy. We have a green shipping initiative running, and for the first time we're creating a maritime sector deal. There's a unique opportunity in time for us, and we must capitalise on it. We must lean in. We must transform the way we adopt technology, the way we integrate and collaborate as all of us, not just the industrialists or the people who do services or the people who do insurance. We've got to collaborate because this is a great opportunity supported by government and other stakeholders, and we must make the absolute most of it. We can have a very exciting maritime future for the UK. I'd love you guys to be a part of it. Please stay. Come and do more. And keep holding our feet in the fire, because this is a community who want this to be a terrifically successful sector. It's an honour and a privilege to be asked to step in as the Vice Chair, and I will be working alongside Harry, not just to deliver on David's legacy, but I hope to go above and beyond even what he expects, because I have a feeling he's going to phone me up and say, "Oi, Kenny, what's going on?" I think I'm handing back to David to close, but I just wanted to say thank you again. Truly inspirational, very, very well done, and I wish you all the very best in your future careers. Thank you very much, everybody.
There you go. That's a flavour of what you've got coming. So, Your Royal Highness, again, thank you so much for being with us this afternoon and being the patron of Maritime UK. We greatly appreciate it. It's inspiring to have you with us at events such as these. So thank you very much. Thank you, students. And we really wish you all the very best in the future. And again, I will say, please stay. all of you. Thank you to Clarksons. Thank you to the Chamber of Shipping. Thank you to everybody. It's been a great evening. Please stay for a little while longer if you have the time. It's a great opportunity to be together and to circulate and talk again about what we've heard. Thank you, Sarah, for your kind words as well. So we will call the formal proceedings to a close and enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you very much.